Okay, good morning to all of you guys. Welcome to everyone here. Welcome to everyone online as well. Today is the fourth day of our 5-day course, and I'm going to start with meditation like I do each morning. But we're going to do a little bit differently today. Is instead of me guiding students, just going to do the chanting, and then you do your own meditation where you're focused on the breath. And anytime your mind moves off the breath, cut that off and let it go and come back to the breath. You need to be able to slowly get to the point where you can actually do meditation on your own. So I'm not going to do guidance today because at the end of the course, you're going to be out there meditating on your own. You're going to need to learn how to meditate without guidance from a teacher. So I'm going to just do the chanting before the meditation and then after the meditation. And then afterwards, I'm going to share this first topic of what is Kamma and how does it affect me. This is the natural law that the Buddha is helping you to be able to awaken to. I'm going to teach you the 4 types of Kamma because by the time you get to enlightenment, you will have extinguished all your unwholesome Kamma. So I'm going to teach you these 4 types of Kamma and how to extinguish all your unwholesome Kamma. We'll take a mid-morning break, and then afterwards I'll teach what is merit, and then ultimately we'll wrap things up with understanding how to receive continued support on the path to enlightenment and how to integrate the teachings into your day-to-day life. So if you'd like to join for meditation, you're welcome to join in the chanting, and then you're on your own on the meditation, just focusing on the breath. And anytime the mind moves off the breath, cut that off and let it go and come back to the breath. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Emakewa Putang Mahakewanang Apiwateyami Sawakato Emakewata Tammo Dhammang namasami Supatipano emakewato Sawaka Sangho Sanghang namami Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso emakewa Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang sammuno Sekatoro kawitu Anutero purisa Dhamma sati satatawa manusanang Bhutto Bhagavati อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมหาเกวาพุทธังมหาเกวันหังอภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตมหาเกวตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหาเกวโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินับโมอะระหะสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนับโมอะระหะสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนับโมอะระหะสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหาเกวาอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารนังสัมมุโนสกาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาดามาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังพุทโธภาควาติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Once again, good morning to all of you guys. Nice to see everyone here. Welcome to everyone joining online as well. So this was a 30-minute meditation. I'm not sure if you guys realize that over the course of the 5 days of this particular course, what I do is I slowly and gradually expand the meditations little by little, because what you would like to build up to is a 2 to 3 sessions per day for about 30 minutes per session. And what I just did is a meditation that was with 30 minutes that didn't involve guidance from me. So now you can see where you're at on your journey with meditation. If that felt like, wow, that was a lot of meditation, that was a real stretch, now you know where you're at with that. Or if you were like, whoa, that seemed like it was no big deal, like, wow, we just went right through that like no problem, now you know where you're at with that. Or if you felt like, wow, that was just right, felt perfect, now you know where you're at. So you can do like a little check-in with yourself on meditation. And what I'm going to do here before I start talking about this first topic is I'm going to check with you guys to see if you have any questions on meditation. Because oftentimes in a course like this, where people are getting started on the path to enlightenment, you might have meditation questions. So I'm just going to pause here for a bit and open up to any meditation questions that you guys have about building up your practice. So here at the temple, we have microphones for you guys. And for anybody online, you can put your questions into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions you like. So any questions on meditation you guys would like to ask before we get started today? No questions? Okay, let's see if we have anything online. I don't see anything online either. Okay, so that means I'm going to move into this first topic of what is Kamma and how does it affect me? When we talk about awakening to enlightenment or getting to the enlightened mental state, what awakening means is to cultivate wisdom. What you're cultivating wisdom about is the natural laws of existence. These natural laws are affecting you whether you're aware of it or not. And the Buddha awakened to these, meaning he cultivated wisdom about them. He was able to understand these natural laws without anybody anybody explaining it to them. That's what a Buddha does, is they get to enlightenment by themselves. Because what the mind's doing in the unenlightened state is it's struggling in the world with this lack of wisdom of how the world truly works and how the world truly functions. This is why it has anger and sadness and frustration and all these other discontent feelings, because the mind is struggling to live in a world that it doesn't understand. If you don't have wisdom about a world that you live in, you'll struggle and have difficulties. That's what we did when we were little kids. That when we first grew up, when we were a little kid, we struggled and had difficulties with the natural law of gravity. We didn't understand this natural law. We fell down, we hit our head, we bumped our elbows, we broke our toys, and we cried and cried and cried. And we didn't understand the world that we lived in. But slowly but surely, we gained wisdom of this natural law. We started to understand this natural law. And now we're at a point where we can climb ladders, we can ride bicycles, we can get on airplanes and fly all over the world, because you would say that we're fully awake to this natural law of gravity, meaning we fully cultivated wisdom about it. We never believed in the natural law of gravity. We actually can see it for ourselves, that it's true. We're not believing that this natural law exists, but instead we've learned something and now we've reflected on it. We can see that it's true. And then we started practicing, meaning we started making wiser decisions. That's why we tie our shoes a bit tighter than we did maybe when we were a child. We look at the surface of the sidewalk when we're walking a bit closer than we did when we were a child. We stopped being so giddy and bouncing around all the time. And now that's why we're able to peacefully coexist in this world. We're able to navigate the world peacefully, that we don't have difficulties with this natural law anymore. In fact, if we fall down now, we might actually start laughing, right? Whereas a kid, we didn't do that because we didn't understand, because we struggled and had difficulties. We had this lack of wisdom. So what the Buddha is helping you to do is cultivate wisdom about other natural laws. There's other natural laws that are affecting you, whether you're aware of it or not. Just like the natural law of gravity was affecting us, whether we're aware of it or not, there's other natural laws that are doing the same thing as well. And just like nobody turns this natural law of gravity on or off, the same thing is true about the natural law of Kamma. Whether you're aware of it or not, it's affecting you. You're never interested in believing in this natural law. Instead, you would like to learn, to examine, investigate it. You would like to reflect on it to verify if it's true or false. And then you'd like to practice. And as you're practicing and making wiser and wiser decisions, you'll see that you won't struggle in the world. That slowly but surely you get to a point where your life is completely at ease and everything's peaceful in your life because you understand the world that you live in. You're not having stress and anxiety and frustration any longer. That can all be eliminated. So I'm going to help you guys to understand 4 types of Kamma. I'm going to help you to understand these 4 types of Kamma and ultimately how to extinguish all your unwholesome Kamma. Because by the time you get to enlightenment, you're only experiencing exclusively wholesome Kamma. You're not experiencing any unwholesome Kamma any longer. But you need to know these 4 types in order to be able to actually get to that point. Now, this word Kamma, it doesn't translate into one English word, or I would just use it. Some people are familiar with the word karma. This is from the Sanskrit language, where the original teachings of the Buddha are in the Pali language. So I use this word Kamma, and I'm going to help you guys to understand what this is. And as we go, you guys are welcome to ask questions. So this is a natural law that is affecting you, whether you're aware of it or not. It's functioning at all times. I've heard all kinds of strange things about this, that people don't understand this natural law. They think about it as like punishments and rewards, or they think about it like a black cloud is following you around. Or I've heard people talk about it like a bank account that you get to deposit things into and you get to subtract things out of and make withdrawals, or some mystical or magical aspect of this. This isn't what this natural law is. This natural law is actually very simple and very straightforward. It's literally cause and effect, or action and results. It's the results of your decisions. It's a sequence of events. When you make decisions in any particular way, you're going to experience Kamma. You're going to experience results. So it's action and result, or the results of your decisions. Everyone is affected by this, whether they're aware of this natural law or not. You're being affected by this natural law. And that's where an individual will struggle and have difficulties, because when you're experiencing certain things in life, you don't understand why you're experiencing that. And now you'll be stressed or have anxiety or frustration or anger. But when you understand why you're experiencing what you're experiencing, the mind is actually quite peaceful and quite joyful, because you understand how this world works and how it's constructed. There's no being or entity that's overseeing this This natural law just happens as a result of our decisions. It's not a system of punishments and rewards or who's to blame or who's at fault. It's nothing mystical or magical. It's literally a sequence of events that is occurring. I think you guys were all here yesterday when I was talking about, if you have difficulties to see that what you're experiencing in your own life is from your own decisions, ask yourself these types of questions. Who chose where you're sitting right now? Who chose the clothing that you're wearing? Who chose the hairstyle that you have? Who chose whether or not you ate breakfast this morning? Who chose where you live? Who chose your job or occupation? Who chose the friends that you spend time with? This is all decisions that you're making. And when you come to understand this natural law, it's very empowering. Again, it's not about blame or fault. It's not about any of that. It's not about punishments and rewards. It's about seeing what are the decisions that I'm making that's leading to this particular result. Because if there's anything in your life that you don't particularly care for, that you would rather not occur, all you need to do is cultivate wisdom, make different decisions, and you'll experience different results. But if it's everybody else that is causing you to experience what you experience, then that means you're stuck. Because oftentimes people think that what they're experiencing is good luck or bad luck or destiny or fate, or they think it might be God or some entity called the universe that is controlling what they experience, or they think it's other people that's controlling what they're experiencing. But it's actually your own decisions that are leading to any particular result that you're having. And now all you need to do is cultivate wisdom, make different decisions, and you'll experience different results. And that's what this natural law of Kamma is all about. It's cause and effect, or it's action and result. It's the results of your decisions. And now you can make better and better decisions the more wisdom you have of this. It's your life, it's your decisions, and it's your results. So in terms of the words of the Buddha in his teachings, everything he taught in one way or another is coming back to this natural law. We might say that this entire book series that I share is about the natural law of Kamma. There's one book over there that is dedicated to the natural law of Kamma, and you're going to see teachings related to the natural law of Kamma in that one book. But we might say that the entire book series is about the natural law of Kamma, because everything the Buddha taught is helping you to cultivate wisdom about this natural law. So when we talk about awakening to the natural laws of existence, this is the main natural law that you're awakening to. It's kind of like the umbrella, and everything else is underneath of that. And as you're approaching to understand this natural law, and we go in and we talk about it in detail, these are two teachings from the Buddha that's helpful for you to understand at this particular point. But understand these aren't the only things he ever said about the natural law of Kamma. All of his teachings are about the natural law of Kamma. He says, beings are the owners of their Kamma, the heirs of their Kamma. They have Kamma as their origin, Kamma as their relative, Kamma as their resort. Whatever Kamma they do, wholesome or unwholesome, they are its heirs. What he's saying to you here is that you're the only one that can create Kamma for yourself. Sometimes when you're in friends or family and you're kind of joking around, someone will say, oh, give me some of your good Kamma. I want that good Kamma. Give me your good Kamma. Or don't rub your bad Kamma off on me, right? This is impossible. It's not possible for you to do that. Any decisions that you make is producing your Kamma. It's not possible for someone to give you good Kamma or give you bad Kamma, so to speak. It's your decisions that lead to any particular result. Then he says, the result of Kamma, I say, is threefold, to be experienced in this very life, in the next rebirth, or on some subsequent occasion. Now, I know some of you guys probably haven't had an opportunity to be able to independently verify the cycle of rebirth, that what you're experiencing is continuous lives being reborn over and over and over again. Right now, you might be believing that you only have one life, but if you dive into these teachings deeply enough, you can independently verify the cycle of rebirth. In volume 11, chapter 105, I have 17 different criteria that help you to independently verify the cycle of rebirth. But it's in volume 11, chapter 105 for a reason, because it's not something that you normally approach right up front. Whatever's happened in the past, it's in the past. It doesn't matter right now. And what may or may not happen in the future, it's in the future. It hasn't happened. Right now, you're in this human life. Your mind is discontent. You're looking to solve that. And that's what I suggest you focus on. But at some point, you're going to need to get to the point where you independently verify the cycle of rebirth. And you'll be able to do that when you get to that point. So here, you're never interested in believing what the Buddha is saying about these kinds of things about rebirth. But what he's sharing with you, because I've independently verified, I know that the cycle of rebirth is 100% true. What he's saying here is you can't run and hide from your Kamma, because whatever decisions you make, it's your decisions that is producing Kamma, and you're going to experience those results either in this life, in the next life, or on some future life after that. If you get to enlightenment, you've extinguished all your unwholesome Kamma. There is no unwholesome Kamma for you to experience. There is no future life. That's not what the Buddha taught. He didn't teach that there is anything after enlightenment. He left that as an undeclared teaching. So sometimes people will tell you that when you get to enlightenment, you're going to go to heaven and you're going to be there forever and all these kinds of things. The Buddha actually left that as an undeclared teaching. If you don't get to enlightenment, he talks about this rebirth and helps you to understand that that's what's occurring. But if you get to enlightenment, he doesn't describe what comes next after that. He leaves it as an undeclared teaching. But by the time you get to enlightenment, you've extinguished all your unwholesome Kamma, so there is no further Kamma to be experienced. So that's one of the reasons why there isn't any rebirth. But if you haven't done that, then this is what he's explaining, that you're going to experience the results of your decisions. So when you see something like this and you learn like, hey, I'm creating all my own Kamma and I can't run and hide from that, the very next question is, well, let me learn the most I can learn about this natural law so that I can extinguish all my unwholesome Kamma. So that's what I'm going to teach you now, the 4 types of Kamma. And then I'm ultimately going to teach you how to extinguish all your unwholesome Kamma. So there's wholesome Kamma and unwholesome Kamma, and then there's old Kamma and new Kamma. Wholesome Kamma is any decisions that you're making that are harmless, that you're not harming another being. Any unwholesome Kamma that you're producing, it's coming from harmful decisions. Remember, you can't cause somebody else to be discontent. You cause your own anger, you cause your own frustration, your own boredom, your loneliness, your stress, your anxiety. It's all being caused by your own mind. But that's true for other people too. If people blame you for the feelings that they are experiencing, you're not causing that. It's their own mind that's causing it. You can't cause someone to be discontent, but you can cause them harm. If you cause harm to someone's physical body, their material possessions, or their reputation, that harm is going to come back to you. So that's why the Buddha bases his teachings in harmlessness. So you can get to the point where you're not causing harm, because any harm you put out, it's going to come back to you. So here you can see wholesome Kamma and unwholesome Kamma through this harmless and harmful decisions. So for example, right now you're sitting here listening to somebody speak. You're not causing any harm. There's no bodily actions that you're doing that's causing harm. There's no verbal actions that you're doing that's causing any harm. There's no harm that you're causing right now. You're not causing harm to anyone's physical body, their material possessions, or their reputation. And that's why there's no harm coming to you, right? You're just sitting here. There's no harm coming to you because you're not causing any harm. But on the other side, if you started causing harm, I don't suggest you do this, but if you started poking the person's eyes next to you, right? If you started poking them in the eye, you're now causing harm. That's harm to that person's physical body, and now harm's going to come to you. They're probably going to slap your hand out of their face, or they're going to push you away, or they're going to get up and move to another part of the room, or whatever it is. There's going to be some harm that comes to you, right? So this is a very simple way to see wholesome Kamma is when you're making harmless decisions, where you're experiencing wholesome results coming to you. And then unwholesome Kamma is when you're making harmful decisions. And now there's going to be unwholesome Kamma, or unwholesome results that come to you as a result. Then there's something called old Kamma and new Kamma. What old Kamma is any decisions that you made in the past that you're experiencing the results of now in the present moment. New Kamma is any decisions that you're making now in the present moment that you're going to experience the results of in the future. So here's an example of this. Let's just say 3 years ago, I filled out some tax forms for the government to report my income. And let's just say I lied on the tax form. And now 3 years later, I get a notice in the mail that says you owe us $3,000, $1,000 for the initial amount, $1,000 penalty, and $1,000 interest. You owe us $3,000. Well, this is my old unwholesome Kamma, because I made an unwise decision in the past, and now I'm experiencing this result. So I'm now getting this old unwholesome Kamma. Well, now in the present moment, whatever decisions I make, I'm producing new karma. And it's either going to be wholesome or unwholesome based on my decisions. Well, if I didn't understand the teachings of the Buddha and I thought I could run and hide from this, I might rip up the piece of paper and throw it away, right? But now I'm producing new unwholesome karma. Or if I didn't know the teachings of the Buddha, I might call up the government or write them a letter, and I might be nasty and bitter and harsh and hostile with them. And now I'm producing new unwholesome karma because my speech and my actions are unwise. I'm being bitter and harsh and hostile. So now I'm going to produce new unwholesome karma. But if I understand my goal in this path to enlightenment is to extinguish all my old unwholesome karma coming back to me, then that means in the present moment, I need to make some wise decisions so I can produce new wholesome karma. So what I would do in this situation is I would call up the government, or I'd write them a letter. I would say, excuse me, sir, excuse me, ma'am, I apologize for this oversight on my part. I would like to take care of this. I really am sorry, right? I'm going to be polite, kind, friendly, and respectful to these people. And now I'm going to say, I'd really like to take care of this, but I'm so sorry. I don't have $3,000. And they might say, sir, you're being so polite with us and so kind with us. We tell you what, we'll drop off the interest. We'll drop off the penalty. You just pay us $1,000. Wow, I'm getting new wholesome karma here, right? So now they're saying you could just pay us $1,000. And then at that point, I would probably say, I really appreciate this. This is so kind of you. Thank you so much. But I don't even have $1,000. I'm so sorry. Is there something we can do to solve this? And now they might say, well, you know what? How about a payment plan? How about if every month you give us $50 or $100 and over the course of multiple months, now you pay this off? Would that work for you? Oh, outstanding. Thank you so much. Right? So now I've generated new wholesome karma because in the present moment, I was making wise decisions. So wholesome karma is any decisions you're making that are harmless. And then unwholesome karma is any decisions you're making that are harmful. Old karma is any decisions that you're making in the past that you have made in the past that you're experiencing the results of now. New karma is any decisions that you're making now that you're going to experience in the future. So this is the 4 types of karma. More specifically, honing in on this wholesome and unwholesome karma, this is connected to something that I was teaching yesterday. Here's the words of the Buddha, where he's describing how you generate unwholesome karma. The way you generate unwholesome karma is you're making decisions through craving, anger, and ignorance. That's why the goal is to eliminate that out of the mind. Because whenever you make decisions through craving, anger, and ignorance, it's going to produce unwholesome karma. Because remember, your craving is your selfish desires. This is your mind longing, yearning, chasing after the objects of your affection. Whenever you're making decisions through craving, you can only be happy when you get what you want. And then you get angry and frustrated when you don't get what you want. So your mind's craving, those selfish desires, are producing unwholesome results. Then your anger, your hostility, your bitterness, your frustration, your agitation and annoyance, this is going to produce unwholesome results. You can independently verify. Whenever you've made decisions through anger, it's produced unwholesome results for you. Maybe you've had a broken relationship, or maybe you lost your job, or maybe some other thing has happened whenever you've made decisions through anger. And then another way is through ignorance, when you're making decisions through the lack of wisdom of these natural laws. When you lack wisdom in these natural laws, you're going to tend to make unwise decisions, and that's going to produce unwholesome karma for you. So whenever you make decisions through craving, anger, and ignorance, it's going to produce unwholesome karma. There's going to be some unwholesome results. Even if you have the slightest little bit of craving, anger, and ignorance in your decision, it will produce unwholesome karma. Then the way you produce wholesome karma is by making decisions through generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom. Because whenever you're making decisions through that, it's going to produce wholesome karma. So when you're giving and sharing with people without any expectation of anything in return, this is producing wholesome results or wholesome karma. When you make decisions through loving kindness, which is a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well, this is active goodwill towards all beings. This is going to produce wholesome results or wholesome karma. And then when you make decisions based in wisdom, when you understand these natural laws and you're making more and more decisions through these natural laws, now you're going to experience wholesome Kamma. So what you're doing on this path is you're gradually bringing down your craving, anger, and ignorance in your mind, and you're gradually increasing your generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom to the point where ultimately you get there and you live your life that way for an extended period of time. I'm going to talk about that some more in more detail about how to extinguish your unwholesome Kamma. But first, let me see if you guys have any questions on these 4 types of Kamma: wholesome Kamma and unwholesome Kamma, or old Kamma and new Kamma. Do you guys have any questions here, what these are and how it's being generated? Yes, if you could get a microphone, that way the people online will be able to hear you. And for those of you guys online, remember, you guys can ask questions too.
I have a question specifically about the craving and the opposite of that being generosity.
Okay.
I think it's harder for me to understand the connection or the how is generosity the opposite of craving. For example, I can think about a scenario where craving coexists with generosity, such as I'm really craving for a certain meal. I really, really want it. But if I were to make it, I want to share with people I care about. So do you mind explaining a bit further, especially the craving versus generosity?
Sure. So craving is the mind longing, yearning, chasing after the objects of its affection. And what the mind will typically do there is, once it is craving, if it acquires something, what it will typically do is it'll hold on to it. It'll cling to it. These are 2 separate things. The mind's longing, yearning, that's the craving, that's the desire. Then there's the attachment or the clinging, where the mind holds on to something. So for example, like someone might think, I really want to get a boyfriend. I really want to get a girlfriend. If I can just get one of those, everything will be perfect. That's the craving. That's the desire. And now the mind's longing, yearning for it. 1 month down the road, 2 months down the road, you get your boyfriend, you get your girlfriend. Now your craving's been fulfilled. So you're getting these pleasant feelings, the happiness, and now you cling to it. Now you're attached to it. You don't want to let it go. Right? So that's the craving and the clinging. So that's what the mind's going to naturally do in the unenlightened state, because that's all it really knows. And that's what it thinks this world's about, is chasing around and getting excitement. What you're doing on the path to enlightenment is training your mind to not do that, is to make wise decisions about your life, and not to long and yearn and crave, and not to cling, because everything's impermanent. If you continue to crave and cling, it's only a matter of time before you experience painful feelings like anger, sadness, frustration, and others. So one of the teachings that you can use in order to be able to do this, to train your mind to let go, is generosity. Because generosity is living open-handedly, giving and sharing with others, and being joyful in doing that without any expectation. And you're sharing your time, effort, energy, and resources. So the generosity, if you practice this daily, it'll lead to your mind being trained to let go. But you need more than just generosity. You can't just go around and practice generosity and you're going to get rid of your craving and clinging. That's where the meditations come in, and that's where all the other factors of the path. You weren't here on Tuesday, I don't think, but on Tuesday I taught all the other factors of the path. You need all of them in order to be able to completely transform the mind. In your example, an individual who has craving for a particular food, and they make that food, and then they choose to practice generosity, those are 2 separate mental actions that the mind is doing. It's 2 separate things. At the beginning, they're craving their food, they make that recipe, but then on the backside, they're practicing generosity, which is very wise. That's what I would advise somebody to do. If you notice that you're having craving and clinging, if you practice generosity with that particular thing, over time your mind will let it go. Where then you can just enjoy your food, and you can, every once in a while, you might decide to order that food or make that food, but you won't have a craving for it. So you can train your mind through generosity and other teachings to let go. Because let's just say you're craving to make this food, and let's just say you're so excited to make this food, and now let's just say you start making it at 10 p.m. at night, and you start putting it all together, and then you realize there was a certain ingredient that you don't have, and now you're angry and frustrated. That's what craving is going to do, is now you're angry and frustrated. But if you get rid of your craving, and now you're making your food, and it's 10 o'clock at night, and you realize, oh, I don't have that ingredient. What am I going to do here? And now you can figure out, can I postpone this recipe, put everything in the refrigerator? I can do it tomorrow. Or is there a substitute that I can use? You won't be angry. You won't be mad. You'll just be able to make wise decisions to figure out, how do I get this recipe accomplished and ultimately get to my goal, but there won't be any anger and frustration. So the generosity will help you to be able to get to that point, and other things as well. Yep. Okay. So no more questions. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to teach you how to extinguish all your unwholesome kamma, because that's what you're doing on the path to enlightenment, is you're getting to a point where you've extinguished all your unwholesome kamma. But before I describe that in detail, let me first give you an analogy of the way that I think about this is being done. So the way I think about it is, all through our life, we've been shoving mud into our garden hose. Right? Before you know these teachings, before you even understand these teachings, we have this garden hose and we've been shoving mud into it, right? Because we didn't understand. We just didn't understand what we didn't understand. We had this lack of wisdom, so we had craving, anger, and ignorance, so we're shoving all this mud into our garden hose. Well, now, once you start learning about the path to enlightenment, you might be taking your garden hose and you're hooking it up to a faucet because you'd like to flush out the mud. So you open up the faucet and you start getting some water, some clean water coming through your garden hose. Well, if you're coming to the temple once every 6 months, if you're meditating once a month, if you're reading a book once a year, you've got like a little drip going through your garden hose. You're not going to clean that out in this life. But if you are regularly visiting a teacher, if you're studying the teachings actively, if you're meditating regularly and all these kinds of things, you're opening up your faucet wider and wider and wider, and you're getting more and more clean water coming through this garden hose. And now as you flush this clean water through the garden hose, it's going to spit mud for a while because we put mud in our garden hose. So it's going to spit mud. But if you keep putting clean water into that garden hose, not only is it going to spit mud, but eventually you're going to get some clean water. So it's going to be like mud, 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 clean water. Mud, 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 clean water, clean water. Mud, 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 clean water, clean water, clean water. Mud, mud, clean water, clean water, clean water, clean water. Mud, clean water, clean water, clean water, clean water, clean water. Mud. And then eventually it's just going to be all clean water, because you've put so many wise decisions into your life, you've flushed out all this unwholesome kamma. So the way that you do this is through learning and practicing the Eightfold Path. You need to learn this teaching in detail. You need to commit it to your memory, and you need to bring your life practice up to that point where you're making decisions through the Eightfold Path for an extended period of time. Where in the past, if you didn't know the Eightfold Path, if somebody was arguing and being bitter and hostile and harsh with you, you might argue and holler and scream right back at them. But that's just producing more unwholesome kamma. You're not going to extinguish this anger and hostility that's coming at you with more anger and hostility. You're going to need to practice the Eightfold Path to train your mind to be calm and peaceful. And oftentimes the best thing to do in that situation is just to walk away. So I'm going to give you some examples from my life so you can see how this works. So all throughout my life, as I was growing up as a child, I was around people who were quite bitter and quite harsh. So my mind was kind of conditioned in that way. That I remember being at a restaurant one time, and a family member and I ordered some food, and our French fries didn't show up. And this person yelled and hollered and screamed at the cashier in order to be able to get our French fries. Instead of just saying, "Excuse me, ma'am, it looks like we don't have our French fries. Would it be possible for us to get our French fries?" Right? That's all that this person had to do. But instead, they yelled and hollered and screamed. So when I was growing up as a child, this conditioned my mind to think a certain way and to function a certain way. And your mind has had those same type of experiences too, because you learn from the people around you. And now your mind is conditioned to think how to function as a human being based on those experiences. So you might actually be bitter and harsh and hostile in certain situations too. So as I was growing up, this is what I would do. In some situations, I would be bitter and harsh and hostile to people, aggressive and nasty, right? Of course, I was polite and respectful in some situations, but in other situations, I was bitter and harsh and hostile. So eventually I met my current wife, who we've now been together for a long time. And when we first got together, of course, you're on the honeymoon phase, right? You got all the best things coming out for the first month or two, right? You're on your best behavior when you first meet this person, right? So that's what I was doing, right? But then over time, that starts to fade away. And now your mental qualities start to come out. You start being bitter and harsh and hostile. So I was like that with my wife for a period of time, up to about the 11th year mark. And now once we got to the 11th year mark, I was noticing how my life was going, where I just had broken relationship after broken relationship after broken relationship, difficulties and struggles. And I decided I was going to do something different. I was going to change the way I was doing things. And I started to practice the teachings of the Buddha very closely. And I started training my mind to be calm and peaceful and loving. So I would come home sometimes and I would be calm and peaceful and loving. And she would be bitter and harsh and hostile with me. Because for 11 years, I was bitter and harsh and hostile with her, right? So this was my Kamma coming back to me. So in the past, if I would have come into the house and she'd be bitter, harsh, and hostile with me, I'd be bitter and harsh and hostile right back, right? It was like fireworks going off in our house, right? And now it just, snowballed into 2, 3, 4, 5 days of arguing, right? Well, when you understand these teachings and you understand that this anger that's coming at you is a result of your decisions, because you've been angry and bitter and harsh in the past, the last thing you're interested in doing is being bitter and harsh and hostile back, because that's not going to solve anything. So what I started doing at this 11-year mark is when she would be bitter and harsh and hostile to me, I would just walk away, which was very different than what I used to do. What I used to do is stand there and fight and yell and holler and scream right back, right? But no, I would just walk away. And then she started realizing that it was her mind that was angry and frustrated. I wasn't angry and frustrated. So this went on for a little while, that as I would come home and she would be bitter and harsh and hostile and yelling at me, I would just walk away. And she got used to this, like, whoa, this is different. I'm not used to this. So then over time, multiple months, I would come home and I had more control over my mind, and she would be bitter and harsh and hostile with me. And I would just sit there and I would listen and I would listen and I would listen, because I knew she had to extinguish it. And then she'd be done and I'd say, thank you, dear. And I'd wire and I'd walk away, right? And then we did that for a little while. Then I would come home. She would be bitter, harsh, and hostile with me, telling me how bad of a husband I was and how horrible I was and all the horrible things I did in the past. And I'd be like, you're right. I did do those things. I was a terrible husband. I made some really unwise decisions. But what about now? You're not doing that anymore. You just walk away. You're so calm. I'm the one who's angry. Thank you, dear. And then I would walk away, right? And slowly but surely, she figured out that it was her mind that was angry, and she had to work on her anger. Her husband wasn't angry anymore, right? So slowly but surely, we got to a point over a 1.5-year time frame that she extinguished her anger. And now it's been many years. There's no arguing. There's no hostility. There's no bitterness. Where in the past, if we had a disagreement where I wanted to do things one way and she wanted to do it another way, we would argue and we would fight. Two unenlightened beings, it's like two animals fighting to death. You've probably been in these kind of arguments before where you're fighting like an animal. It's like trying to prove that you're right, and they're trying to prove that they're right. You're fighting till death. That's like what it is. It's like two wild animals fighting to death. But when you understand the universal truth of impermanence and you understand the teachings of the Buddha, you understand that of course this person has a different opinion than you. It's normal. So now when me and my wife have a different approach to something, we sit down and we talk about it. Where before we would argue because I was trying to convince her to do it my way and she was trying to convince me to do it her way, right? But now we sit down and talk because we understand, of course we have a different opinion. That's impermanence. That's normal. There's nothing wrong with having a different opinion. So now we sit down and I talk about my ideas. She talks about her ideas. Sometimes she changes her mind and she does it my way. Sometimes I change my mind and I do it her way. Sometimes we blend our ideas and we walk away with a decision that we both do together. Sometimes we talk, she still does it her way and I do it my way. And we're completely fine with that, right? This is normal, right? So this is what you can get to. If you practice these teachings closely, not just the generosity, but the meditation and all the moral conduct and the mental discipline and all those other things, you can get to a point where you're extinguishing all your unwholesome karma. But you need to get to a point where you have discipline over your mind. And when this hostility and bitterness is coming at you, that you're not being hostile and harsh and bitter back to them. Because as long as you're being hostile and harsh and bitter, you're functioning through craving, anger, and ignorance, and you're generating new unwholesome karma. You need to generate new wholesome karma through generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom. And during this period of time, even now, but for that year and a half, I was practicing lots of generosity with my wife, right? Like I would be at the market, I would see some avocados. I know she likes avocados and they're pretty rare here in Thailand. And I would get her some avocados and I would bring her some avocados home, right? And I would practice generosity with her, right? So you're going to need to practice generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom with the people in your life. Oftentimes when we have difficulties in relationships, we try to change the other person. And you keep trying to change the other person and you think that's what's going to lead to the results of an improved relationship, but that's not what's going to lead to the results of an improved relationship. You actually need to change your mind, because when you change your mind, the other person, they're going to shift. They're going to start changing, because what your friends and family are going to realize is that if they're interested in talking to you, they're going to need to do that calmly, that you don't talk to people when their mind is all angry and frustrated. That's what my wife learned, that every time she was angry and hostile and bitter, her husband walked away from her. And if she was interested in talking to her husband, she was going to need to be calm. I didn't teach her that overtly. I didn't give her unsolicited guidance and tell her that. I just taught her through my actions that whenever she was bitter and harsh and hostile, I just walked away. And slowly but surely, she realized, man, if I'm going to have a conversation with this guy, I'm going to need to be calm, because there were certain things that she needed to talk to me about, like certain bills, certain expenses. And if she was bitter and harsh and hostile, I just walked away. And if the bill was late and she ended up having to pay a late fee, that's on her. That's her karma. But if she was calm and peaceful, then I would talk to her, right? So I needed to clean that up with her. But not only did I need to clean it up with her, but I started noticing my son started being bitter and hostile with his mom. At this time, he was only about 6 years old, and him and his mom were having a terrible relationship because he learned through me. He saw me for all those years talking to his mom, being bitter and harsh and hostile, and he thought that was the way that he should talk to his mom. So now, not only did I need to clean this up with my wife, that was my unwholesome karma, I needed to clean it up with my son. I needed to teach him how to interact with his mom in a loving and kind and warm and gentle way. Yes, through my actions, but also through my spoken words too. So I taught him these teachings so that he could now have a wonderful relationship with his mom. And now slowly but surely, he's figured that out. And now they have a wonderful relationship too. There's never any arguing in our house. There's never a harsh or hostile, bitter word in our house. It's been many years. We've been together now for 19 years, my wife and I, right? We've been together for 19 years, but we've been happily together for about 7 or 8 years, right? It took us time to figure this out. So you probably have relationships right now that you're struggling in, that you're having difficulties in. And there's kind of 3 categories of relationships. And this is how you're going to clean this up. The way you clean up your relationships is there certain relationships that you're having difficulties and struggles in right now that are very problematic, and you're not committed to the relationship. And there's too many problems on your side and there's too many problems on their side. And the best thing to do in that situation is just walk away from the relationship. It's just move on with your life. Right? Just stop calling the person, stop interacting with the person, just move on. Just kind of ride off into the sunset, right? So there's a certain category of relationships you're going to need to just let go of. You're not committed to it and you just move on. The second type of relationship is like with my wife. It's a relationship that was difficult and challenging, but I was committed to it. I was interested in seeing this relationship succeed. So I stepped away. I worked on my mind, did the work that I needed to do on my mind. And then when I came back into the relationship, I was able to do things better. I was functioning differently. I was no longer being bitter and harsh and hostile any longer. So that cleaned up that relationship. Then there's a third category of relationships. Brand new people you haven't even met yet. You don't even know their names. You don't know who they are. But whenever you meet those people, you're only ever going to be loving and kind to them. And that means that's what you'll experience coming back in those relationships. So these are the 3 categories of relationships and how you need to clean these up. Some of them you're going to need to just walk away from and move on from and realize not interested, too much work, not committed, and just move on. And that'll clean up that kamma. The second type are people that you're committed to, maybe your parents, your siblings, your life partner, your children. You're going to need to do some work on your mind. And now you'll function differently in those relationships. And then the third category are brand new people you haven't even met yet. You'll only ever be loving and kind with those people, like here, right? You guys are only loving and kind with each other. And that's why that's what you're experiencing from each other, right? So now you'll just be loving and kind with all these new relationships. And as a result, you'll clean up your existing relationships. And now you'll have all these new relationships where you're only ever loving and kind. And over time, this is what's going to clean up your life. But you're going to need to bring your practice up to the Eightfold Path. So you're going to need to learn that and practice it closely. It's going to take you multiple years just to get your practice up to that point. And then you need to live your life that way for an extended period of time through the Eightfold Path. And that's what's going to clean all this up. Okay, so it's gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. You can't snap your fingers and get to enlightenment today. It's not possible. It took the Buddha 6 years to get to enlightenment. So it's going to take you some time. You're going to need to be patient with yourself. Gradually bring your practice up to the Eightfold Path and live your life that way for an extended period of time. That's putting the clean water into the garden hose. That's making the wise decisions. And then eventually you'll get to a point where you don't have any difficulties in your life. No struggles. You'll have certain challenges, but you'll have plenty of wisdom to be able to face those challenges. Now, when I say that you don't have any unwholesome kamma and you only experience exclusively wholesome kamma, sometimes what people hear is everything's going my way. That's not what I'm teaching you. What I'm teaching you is you don't have any unwholesome kamma. You're still going to experience impermanence. There's still things that you're going to experience as impermanence, but your mind's not going to be discontent when you experience it. There's 5 things that you can't avoid, no matter how enlightened you are. You're still going to experience sickness, aging, death, loss, and destruction. These are the 5 unobtainables. You can't get to a point where you don't experience these things, but you can get to a point that when you're experiencing those things, your mind's not discontent. So you'll experience sickness as an enlightened being, but you won't be discontent. You'll still be joyful. You'll experience aging. You'll see this body is going to change, but you won't be upset and disgruntled and frustrated about that. You'll still experience death, but you're not going to have fear. You're not going to have painful mental anguish as you're getting close to death. You'll still experience loss and destruction, right? There can still be a tree that falls on your house as an enlightened being. And someone might be like, oh my gosh, this is unwholesome kamma, right? Well, if you're enlightened, you're still going to experience this, but you're not going to be angry. You're not going to be frustrated. As an unenlightened being, when that tree falls on your house, you'll be angry. You'll be frustrated. You'll be really agitated, right? But as an enlightened being, when the tree falls on your house, it's like, okay, well, there's a tree on my house. Let me figure out how to get rid of this. I need to hire some people to come cut it up. Maybe need to move out for a month or 2 while they repair the house. You'll be completely content and peaceful. You'll just start making decisions to be able to resolve this impermanent situation. But as an unenlightened being, you're holding on to your house so tight that when it gets damaged and destroyed, this is impermanence and your mind won't like it. You'll be frustrated and angry. So you'll still experience sickness, aging, death, loss, and destruction. It's still going to happen. But it's not based in your unwise decisions. It's based in just impermanence, that the world is impermanent and you're still going to experience these things. So do you guys have any questions on extinguishing your unwholesome kamma and how this works? No questions? Okay. So now I'll teach you guys the next thing. This is the laws of society. Sometimes when I'm teaching the natural law of kamma and I teach people that you can't run and hide from your kamma, somebody raises their hand and they say, hold on a second, David. What about that guy who their bloody footprint was at the murder scene and their blood was all over their car and the bloody murder weapon was under their bed and they went to court and they were found not guilty? Didn't they run and hide from their kamma? Nope, they didn't run and hide from their kamma. That's the laws of society. The laws of society are imperfect, right? They're created and administered by human beings, and now as they're being applied, There's going to be errors. There are going to be mistakes. But they haven't run from their Kamma. They're still experiencing their Kamma. The human laws are imperfect. So going to court and being found guilty and going to prison is just one part of potential Kamma that you can experience. But this person who their bloody footprint was at the murder scene, the blood was all over their car, the bloody murder weapon was under their bed, they're still experiencing their Kamma. You just might not be there to see it. So using this example, I'm going to show you how this person is still experiencing their Kamma. Okay? So they're still going to have a bad reputation in the community because the news is out. It's all over the news. People know that this person's been accused of murder, and they can see this evidence all over the news that this person was potentially the murderer, right? So they're going to have this bad reputation in the community. They can experience sickness, disease, physical and mental pain in a shortened lifespan. The way that this happens is that whatever's going on in your mind, that's going to put strain on the body. So if you have a lot of stress and anxiety and fear and guilt and shame in your mind, this is going to put stress on the organs, your heart, your lungs, your gallbladder, all these different things. So you can have a shortened lifespan. You can have sickness. This is all what's going to happen, because if you have enough craving to go kill somebody, and you could kill a human being, and you had that much craving, anger, and ignorance in your mind, then that means that you have a lot of craving in other parts of your life too. And that's putting a lot of stress in your mind and a lot of difficult emotions to deal with. And that's putting strain on your body. And now you can experience sickness, disease, physical and mental pain in a shortened lifespan. Also, you can experience hostility, aggression, fights, and even being killed yourself. Because if you have enough craving to go kill another human being, it's not like all the rest of your relationships are going wonderful, right? You're still having difficulties in all these other relationships that you're in too. So you could easily experience these things. You can also experience a loss of income and wealth, because to go to court and defend yourself on a murder charge is very expensive. You're going to need to take off work, and you're going to need to spend a ton of money on lawyers and legal fees to be able to go to court and actually defend yourself. So you're going to lose income and you're going to lose wealth. You're going to have difficulties in relationships. Like I said, it's not like all the rest of your relationships are going wonderful, right? Your relation with your parents, your siblings, your friends, your coworkers, people like this, you're going to have difficulties there too. Securing and progressing in employment and securing housing. You're going to have difficulties with this. Like, say you're an employer and you're trying to hire somebody for a job, and you get an application from this person who's been all over the news who is accused of murder. They're out. They were found not guilty, but now they're trying to find a job. Are you going to hire this person to work for you? Or say you have an extra room in your house and you're looking for a roommate. And now you get these applications of people who would like to live with you. And now this person who was accused of murder applies to live with you. Are you going to select them to live with you? Probably not, right? They're going to have difficulty securing employment and securing housing. This is part of their unwholesome Kamma. They're also, because of all of that, going to have difficulties acquiring basic necessities to sustain their life, like food, clothing, shelter, medical care, and things like this. That's going to be harder for them than it was before when they weren't accused of murder. And then discontentedness itself in rebirth. They're going to have a certain amount of guilt and shame and fear in their mind, stress and anxiety that they're going to be living with for a period of time, right? And then actual rebirth. If they don't actually train their mind and do something to improve, they can easily experience rebirth in a particular place that's undesirable, right? So this is still their Kamma. They're still experiencing their Kamma. They might have been found not guilty in the court of law because the laws of society are imperfect, but they can't escape the natural law of Kamma. It's not possible. You can actually have the other side of this too. Not only can you go to the human courts and the laws of society and be found not guilty when you're actually guilty, you can actually have the other side of this happen too. You can be not guilty and you can actually go to court and be found guilty. That's happened plenty of times in the world too, right? So let's just say that I was like a gang member, and from the age of 18 to 25, I was running around with this gang. And let's just say that I was selling drugs, I was beating people up, I was murdering people, I was doing all kinds of stuff, I was robbing people, but I was never caught for any of this stuff. And now let's just say by the age of 25, I decided to get out of this gang. I decided I'm not interested in it anymore, and I'm going to go away from this gang. Now I'm 26, I'm 27, happen. Let's just say the gang goes out and does a murder and somehow it gets pinned on me and I wasn't even there, right? But now I go to court and I'm found guilty for this, right? This is my karma because all those times that I did all that stuff that I never got caught, now I'm going to court and I'm being found guilty for something I didn't even do, right? So you can actually have these kinds of situations occur too. So the laws of society are imperfect. We would always be wise to try to find more equitable and fair and just ways to create laws and apply them. But because human beings are involved, we're prone to error because people have craving, anger, and ignorance in their mind, and they're going to be prone to error. So that's why you see these kinds of things. So when you see some case on the news and you're just sure this person's guilty and they are found not guilty, no need to be angry or frustrated about that. They're still experiencing their karma. And if you see someone who you think is not guilty and they'll go to court and they're found guilty, no need to be upset and angry about that. This is the natural law of Kamma. It's going to function, right? It's going to, you're going to experience the results of your decisions, either in this life, a future life, or some subsequent occasion. So you can rest at ease and understanding that the natural law of Kamma is always functioning and people are experiencing the results of those decisions. What you would like to do is focus on your life and extinguishing your karma. Sometimes what people like to do is look at other people and try to, figure out other people's life. But what you need to be able to do is figure out your life. And that's what this does, is it empowers you to be able to see that. Because you'll be able to see your karma. As you learn about this, you'll be able to see your karma 100%. But you won't necessarily be able to see other people's karma 100%. So any questions on this? No questions? Okay. So it's 10:26. Usually I take a break here and then we come back and we learn the next topic, which is what is merit and continued support on the path to enlightenment. But let me propose something to you guys. If you would like, I can either take a break and then come back and teach this in a shortened version, or I can just go ahead and teach it now in a shortened version, and we can actually probably be done by 11 o'clock today. Of course, the course is planned out to go all the way up to lunch and then even have time after lunch. But when it's a smaller class like this, and you guys don't really have very many questions, you haven't asked anything today except for one question. Oftentimes we end class early. So if you guys would like, I can teach you guys this now and we can be done by 11 o'clock. I can shorten it up. No, we would be done at 11 o'clock because I can teach you everything for the rest of the day in probably like the next 30 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. You need a break now? Okay, we can do that too. We can take a little break here and then come back, and then I can still teach you in about 30 minutes everything that needs to happen for us to finish up our day. You would like to take a break? Okay. Yeah, it's okay. We can take a break because I usually take one about an hour and a half. So why don't we take a 20-minute break? That'll bring us back at 10:45. And then I'm going to teach for about another 30 minutes and we'll be finished about 11:15 today. Okay. So take a little break and I'll see you guys in about 20 minutes. Okay. All right. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Sorry, Beth. Okay, I'm gonna get started now at 10:45. Um, yeah, it's okay. She'll come back when she comes back. Uh, she was the one who would like the break, right? If she comes, I see her walking across the parking lot. Okay, so this next topic of what is merit, this is actually wholesome karma, but it's a specific type of wholesome karma. I'm going to explain to you guys what this is, and just like always, you guys are welcome to ask questions. So I'm going to shorten this up for you guys. Um, I'm going to jump right to this diagram. So in order to be able to get to enlightenment, you're going to need to practice generosity. Generosity is where you're giving and sharing without any expectation of anything in return. It trains your mind to let go. And you're going to need to be able to do that with your friends, your family, your coworkers, people you don't even know. It is sharing your time, effort, energy, and resources. But you need to be able to do this from the middle. Whereas if you sharing excessively, you're not going to have the resources you need to be able to sustain your life. But if you're never sharing, you're going to be quite selfish. So you need to come to the middle where you're giving and sharing with the people around you, right? You can like see that your neighbor's trash is blown all over the yard, and maybe they're on vacation. You could pick this up, right? That would be generosity, right? So it doesn't always involve money. It's your time, effort, energy, and resources. Well, when you're practicing generosity, this is training your mind to eliminate craving, desire, attachment, the underlying cause of all discontentedness. So whenever you're practicing generosity, you can ask yourself this question: was this an offering to a teacher to support the continued sharing of the Buddha's teachings, helping others to attain enlightenment? If the answer is no, you're experiencing these benefits, that you're eliminating craving, desire, attachment in the mind, and it's helping you to generate wholesome results or wholesome karma because you're eliminating the selfishness from the mind. So you're experiencing those benefits. This is like sharing with your friends and your family and your coworkers and people like that. You're going to need to do that in order to get to enlightenment. But if you're practicing generosity and the answer is yes, that it is to help the teachings of the Buddha reach other people, then you're experiencing those same benefits, which is you're experiencing the elimination of craving, desire, attachment. You're also eliminating any selfishness from your mind, but you're also helping other beings to be able to get access to the teachings of the Buddha. That's what we call merit, that you're providing the opportunity for other people to be able to get access to the teachings. When the Buddha talks about this in his teachings, he talks about making offerings to somebody who's in one of the 4 stages of enlightenment, or someone who's practicing to get into one of the 4 stages of enlightenment. Because what the merit is that if you're coming in contact with somebody who's in one of the 4 stages of enlightenment or practicing to get into one of the 4 stages of enlightenment, you're now going to be able to ask that person questions to be able to help you to be able to progress on the path, right? It's important that when I'm starting to teach this topic, that you remember that the Buddha was a prince. He was destined to become a king. He was very rich and very wealthy. He walked away from that life. So he wasn't teaching this topic in order to be able to enrich himself. He was already rich. In fact, during his lifetime, he didn't even accept gold and silver. He didn't accept land. He didn't accept anything of value. The only thing that he would actually accept was food, clothing, shelter, and medical care. Nowadays, people do accept financial support because there's things like bills to pay, electric bills and water bills and things like this. And there's not always a student there to be able to help you with that. Where during the lifetime of the Buddha, he actually lived right alongside of his students, and they shared with him. They shared with him their home, their food. They gave him clothing. They gave him the things that he needed in order to sustain his life. And that's all that he needed, was just to sustain his life. So he wasn't teaching this topic to enrich himself. He was teaching it because at one point people asked him, how is it that you got to enlightenment by yourself? And the number one thing that he talks about is generosity, that he he practiced an enormous amount of generosity. So whatever he practiced in order to get to enlightenment, that's what you're going to need to practice in order to get to enlightenment. So that's the reason why he taught to practice generosity, because it's helping to train your mind to get to enlightenment. But he taught to practice generosity to people who are either in one of the 4 stages of enlightenment or practicing for the realization of one of the 4 stages of enlightenment. Because if you can imagine, during the lifetime of a Buddha, there are countless people who are studying with a Buddha. And there's a core group of people who are studying the teachings and practicing them really closely. And those people are getting to enlightenment. But then there's people in the outer edges who are also learning with a Buddha, but they're not really practicing the teachings very closely. And what the Buddha was interested in is seeing his teachings continue in the world, because he knew that this is what was going to help the world. And the way that you ensure your teachings are going to continue in the world as a Buddha is you help people get to enlightenment. The more people that get to enlightenment, the teachings are embedded in their mind. They will never forget what it takes for them to be able to get to enlightenment. So by having more and more people get to enlightenment during his lifetime, that would actually help the teachings continue in the world. So these people on the outer edges who weren't really practicing the teachings very well, the Buddha taught that you don't necessarily need to support those individuals. Instead, support the people who are practicing the teachings very closely. He refers to this as the noble community. I'll show you some more information on that here in a moment. Here's where he's talking about that. He's saying here that it would be wise to support a stream enterer, a once returner, a non-returner, and an arahant, or someone who's practicing to get into one of those 4 stages. This is the 4 stages of enlightenment. He's saying these are the people to practice the teachings, these are the people that are practicing the teachings the closest, so these are the people to support. And by you supporting those individuals, then it helps the teachings to come into the world. Because everything you practice, it needs to be based in discernment. Every decision you make needs to be based in discernment, which is wise decision making, including the way you practice generosity. You're not interested in having expectations when you practice your generosity, but you would like to practice discernment. So, for example, if you went to a temple and you saw ordained practitioners smoking cigarettes, gambling, maybe using drugs and alcohol, if you make offerings to those people, that's where your offering's going to go. But if you go to a place where you see people that are actively sharing the teachings and helping people to get to enlightenment, and you make offerings to those people, then that's where your offering's going to go. It's going to help to actually benefit people to be able to learn and practice the teachings. So, for example, everything around you right now, everything that you're looking at pretty much is merit. That there was somebody at some point that made a donation to be able to allow us to be able to do what we're doing right now. So, for example, this land that we're on, this at one point was owned by a Thai person. And 500 years ago, they must have received enough benefit through the teachings of the Buddha that they decided to donate it to be able to create a temple. And then people started putting resources together over a period of time, and they started building buildings. And they built all these buildings, right? This particular building isn't 500 years old. This building was built in 1972. And I was invited here to teach in 2022. And when I came here, this room was really run down. It was old and it was dilapidated. It looked like someone hadn't touched it since 1972. That's how old and run down it was. And then there were students that came together and they decided that they were interested in fixing this place up and making it nicer. When I first moved in here, we didn't have air conditioning, right? I used to sit here and meditate, and the students would be meditating. I could feel the sweat underneath of my clothes rolling down my skin, right? So slowly but surely, there were people that were getting benefit from the teachings, and they decided to contribute to make this place nicer. The microphone that I'm talking on, the projector that I'm using, this is all donations from somebody. At one point, I had this old beat up projector that people could barely even see what it was that I was projecting. And then some students got together and they said, hey, why don't we buy a new projector? Because we receive so much benefit in these teachings, we would like other people to get benefit too. So everything that you're seeing around you was all somebody at some point said, hey, let me make this place better for somebody else. Even the meditation cushions that you're sitting on, these were all purchased by somebody else. So this is merit. And they decided that they would like to see this environment become better so that they could offer opportunities for people to be able to learn the teachings. So that's what the Buddha is teaching you here. So we won't go through this in detail, but you can learn this. It's actually in the book. This is chapter 10 that I'm teaching you right now. Okay. So the practice of generosity eliminates craving, desire, attachment from the mind. This is the cause of discontentedness. You're going to need to practice generosity, not just towards temples and sharing the teachings, but in other parts of your life, you're going to need to practice generosity too. The Buddha talks about how this eliminates the stain of selfishness. because he looks at selfishness as a stain because the mind's holding on to it. Oftentimes the mind thinks, if I spend 3 hours doing this, I want this in return. And if I spend 3 days doing this, I want this in return, right? You're going to need to do that to a certain degree with your employer in order to be able to acquire the resources that you need. But you would also like to have a practice of generosity where you're giving and sharing without any expectation of anything in return, right? And that'll eliminate the stain of selfishness. As you're practicing the teachings and you're starting to see more and more benefit with them, that might be the time that you decide that you would like to share with other people to be able to help other people get access to these teachings. There's something that is a misunderstanding that exists in the world, even here in Thailand, that if you go to a temple and you make offerings to a ordained practitioner, typically what they'll do is they'll gesture for you to go get this little urn of water, and then as they're chanting, you're pouring out this urn of water. And what they think is that you're transferring your merit to somebody else, that whatever benefit that you created by making that offering, that you're transferring it to someone else, typically dead relatives. It's kind of like, mom and dad, grandma, grandpa, aunts and uncles. Maybe they did a lot of unwholesome things in their life. So the children think that they can go to the temple, make a bunch of offerings, and then they transfer the benefit to their parents or their aunts and uncles. Really warm to think about that as like a really warm thought, but it's just not true. It's not possible. This is a ceremony. This is a ritual. It's a big misunderstanding. If you understand the benefits of merit, which is in it's enhancing the quality of your mind by you practicing generosity, and you're getting wisdom because you're coming in contact with somebody that you can learn from and that you can grow on the path to enlightenment. You can't transfer those benefits to somebody else. It's not possible. So there's this misunderstanding that you'll see in Thailand around this. You'll see it in other parts of the world too, where they're doing this little ceremony, this little ritual. Whenever you see any kind of ceremony or ritual, right away you know it's not the teachings of the Buddha. If people are doing rites, rituals, ceremonies, worship, prayer, things like this, those people haven't understood the teachings of the Buddha yet if they're doing those kinds of things. So you'll need to decide what kind of environments you go into in order to learn. I would suggest you go into the places that are sharing the original teachings of the Buddha, because that's what's actually going to lead to your enlightenment. So this kind of thing is just a big misunderstanding that people have, but you're going to see it regularly. Whether you choose to do it or not, that's a choice for you to make, but I just let you know that this is a misunderstanding. Okay? There was a person who asked the Buddha about making offerings during his lifetime, and he was teaching, it happened to be a female. So he was saying that there's these ways to purify your offering. And the way to make an offering is that before you make an offering, your mind should be joyful. In the act of making an offering, your mind should be calm and confident. And then after you make an offering, your mind should still be joyful. Right? So this is that protect your mind, that if you've done some thought about any offering that you're making, you would like to be joyful and realize that, yeah, I can let this go and I can make this offering. And then in the act of giving to someone, you would like to be calm and confident. Sometimes if you have conceit in your mind, you might be putting yourself above or below people. And when you're around somebody that you're making an offering to, you might feel shaken up by that, right? So the Buddha is teaching you to be calm and confident when you're making your offering. And then after you're done with your offering, you would like to still be joyful. Because sometimes at the end of an offering, somebody can be like, oh man, I gave too much. Why did I give that much? I can't even pay my rent now. How am I going to live? Right? You could have remorse. Or you could have the other side of this too, where you're like, oh, why didn't I give more? Man, I'm so stingy. I only gave this, or I only gave that, or I only did this. I could have done more. I feel so stingy now. Right? So you're not interested in either of those things happening. So you would like to be joyful before and after your offering. If you decide to make an offering to someone, and you'd like to be calm and confident in the act of offering. Then the Buddha talks about the type of person to make an offering to. He says, look for someone who's free of craving, anger, and ignorance. If someone's free of craving, anger, and ignorance, their mind is enlightened. They're no longer experiencing anger and frustration and all those other feelings. Or he says practicing for the removal of craving, anger, and ignorance, meaning they're on their way. They're on the journey. They're actively working to train their mind. That's the type of person to support. Because like I mentioned, if you can imagine during the lifetime of a Buddha, there were countless people who were around the Buddha, and not everybody was practicing the teachings closely. There's people like that today. You might hear stories of this from time to time. I'll share just one of them with you. Several years ago, there was this individual who was ordained, and they were accepting offerings from the community. They were accepting donations, and they were then using those donations to purchase things like Fendi bags and Gucci sunglasses. And they were renting chartered airplanes to fly around Thailand in private airplanes. And of course, they were putting it on Facebook and Instagram and all that kind of stuff. Well, the Thai people found out about it, and they sent the police to go arrest him. And he ended up leaving and going to the USA. So they put out an Interpol warrant, and they arrested this person in the U.S. They had the U.S. police go arrest this person. They extradited them back to Thailand, and they went through the court system, and they were found guilty of embezzlement and fraud, and they were sentenced to 20 years in prison, right, in Thailand. Yeah. So I know in some countries, they will use teachings like this to enrich themselves and put money in their pocket. But Thailand takes this stuff very seriously. They know that if you're making offerings to a community, or if you're making offerings to a teacher, it's not just for the teacher, it's for the community, right? So what the teacher should be doing is using a certain portion of those offerings in order to be able to sustain their own life, but then they should be using those offerings to help the community. You should see that there's offerings that are being offered to the community, like classes, courses, retreats. There should be a center available for students to be able to come and learn. That teacher shouldn't be putting the money in their pocket and enriching themselves, but instead helping other people to be able to get access to the teachings. So there's those types of things that happen today, but the Thai people take it very seriously. And there's been other cases like this too, where people have been sentenced to even longer prison sentences. I've seen some as long as 50 or even 120 years for people that are doing this kind of stuff. So the Thai people take this very seriously, and you would like to practice discernment. Whenever you're making offerings, make sure you understand who you're making an offering to, and that you've seen enough evidence that this person is sharing the teachings to be able to help other people to get access to the teachings, that they're not doing rites, rituals, ceremonies, worship, and things of this nature, that they're, that they have a deep understanding of what the teachings are, and they're not enriching themselves. They're not gambling. They're not using drugs and alcohol. They're not, beating animals and hurting animals and things like this, right? Because you can see these kinds of things sometimes. You can see, people that are doing this, and you would like to not be supporting that. You would like to be supporting someone who's actually actively practicing the teachings, because then by you spending time with that person, you will learn the teachings too. And you can get closer and closer to enlightenment. And then what you're doing is you're supporting other people to be able to get access to the teachings. During the lifetime of the Buddha, he was asked at one point to kind of boil his teachings down, because what you guys will see is the Buddha's teachings are very comprehensive. He has extensive amount of teachings, and you're going to need to learn a fair amount of those in order to be able to get to enlightenment. But as you're first getting started, there were students that would sometimes come to him and say, hey, can you just boil your teachings down for me? Like, what can I do? Just like something really simple to be able to make my way to enlightenment, right? And of course, they didn't talk exactly like that to the Buddha, right? They talked in other ways. They would say, Venerable Sir, your teachings are very extensive. Is there a way for you to help us to see the truth of your teachings in a way that would be very straightforward, or something like this, right? They would speak much more formally. But nonetheless, the Buddha boiled this down to 3 things. He said, if you do these 3 things on a daily basis, you are making your way to enlightenment. There's other things besides this that you'll need, but these are 3 things that you should pay attention to and be doing on a daily basis. He talked about practicing generosity, improving your moral conduct, and meditation. This is called the way of practice. Each day, frequently, you would like to be practicing generosity, giving and sharing with the people around you. You're going into a store. You can open the door, let somebody else go in. Somebody drops their wallet on the ground. Sir, ma'am, you dropped your wallet. This is yours, right? You can do these kinds of things. It doesn't cost you any money. Of course, every once in a while, you're going to need to spend some money in order to practice generosity. So do that, but do it from the middle, right? So you're going to need to be frequently practicing generosity each day. Then each day you're going to need to pay attention to your moral conduct, improving the way you interact with other people through your intentions, your speech, your actions, and your livelihood. You're going to need to improve your moral conduct because right now you probably have a certain amount of bitterness and harshness and hostility in certain situations, and you would like to improve that. So you're going to need to pay attention to that. It's the Eightfold Path that's going to help you to improve your moral conduct. Then you would like to be practicing meditation because that's what's going to help you to implement the moral conduct. Every day you'd like to be meditating. You'd like to be practicing meditation. So this is called the way of practice, right? In terms of cleaning up your unwholesome kamma, right? Your old unwholesome kamma that's coming back to you. One of the ways you might think about it is like there's an oil pipe and it's busted and it's spewing oil all over the world. The oil coming out of the pipe, that's your new kamma. All the oil on the floor that's collecting, that's your old kamma. So if your oil pipe is busted and you're spewing oil all over the world, what are you going to do first? Are you going to clean up the mess on the floor, or are you going to shut down the oil pipe? You're going to shut down the oil pipe, right? So that's what the Buddha is teaching you here, is shut down the oil pipe. Stop spewing all this unwise moral conduct into the world. Because if you keep putting all this unwise moral conduct into the world, you're just producing more new unwholesome kamma. You need to shut that down so that now by shutting that down, you're not spewing oil into the world anymore. And now you can clean up all your old unwholesome kamma that's on the floor, right? As it's coming back to you, now you can clean it up. That's what you would like to do. So this is what you would like to be doing on a daily basis. Each day practicing generosity, each day improving your moral conduct, each day meditating. And the Buddha's teachings on the Eightfold Path teach you and guide you on how to do this. Then this is a teaching that I usually share when I teach this topic. It's very impactful, I think. It's titled, If Beings Knew the Results of Giving and Sharing. Monks, if beings knew, as I know, the results of giving and sharing, they would not eat without having given, nor would the stain of selfishness obsess them and take root in their minds. Even if it were their last bite, their last mouthful, they would not eat without having shared it, if there was someone to share it with. But because beings do not know, as I know, the results of giving and sharing, they eat without having given, and the stain of selfishness obsesses them and takes root in their minds. So what's the results of giving and sharing that the Buddha knows that other people don't know? It's the peace and joy of enlightenment. That's what generosity leads to. Generosity leads to this enlightened mental state. He's saying, if beings knew as I know how peaceful and joyful the enlightened mental state is, and it's generosity that leads to that, they would not eat without having shared it if there was someone to share it with. But because beings do not know as I know how peaceful and joyful the enlightened mental state is, they eat without having shared it. And the stain of selfishness obsesses them and takes root in their minds, right? So you would like to give and share, including your food, because just like an animal, the unenlightened mind functions very much like an animal. An animal will hoard its food. You might have difficulty sharing your food. Here in Asia, we usually share food, right? We put food in the middle, and then you take 2 or 3 spoonfuls and you put it on your plate and you eat that. And you take another 2 or 3 spoonfuls and you eat that, right? That's typically how we eat here in Asia. Because if you're a family of 4, you might not have enough money for everybody to have a big meal and to be full at the end of the meal. You might be having difficulties to provide food for your family. So if we put all the food in the middle and everybody takes a spoonful or 2 or 3, and then they eat it, and everybody takes another 2 or 3 spoonfuls and eat it, at the end of the meal, everybody's had some food. We might not all be full, but we've all had some food, right? So this is one of the ways we eat here in Asia, right? So depending on how you eat, you might actually hoard your food. You would actually like to do just the opposite. You would like to start giving and sharing. So if you went to 7-Eleven and you got a bag of potato chips and your friends are around, you might decide to open the bag of potato chips and send it around, right? And now when it comes around, maybe there's 1 chip left and you eat your 1 chip and now you go get another bag. And it's not that expensive, right? You can afford another bag of potato chips, but that's a way for you to actually share, right? So you can share food, you can share things. This is going to help you to train your mind to let go, because the unenlightened mind functions very much like an animal, and it will hoard its food. So you would like to share things, including food. Here, the Buddha is talking about sharing the teachings is the most superior thing that you could do, that it's the best thing that you could do, the gift of the teachings. So here he says, monks, there are these two kinds of gifts, a gift of material things and a gift of the teachings. Of these two kinds of gifts, this is supreme, a gift of the teachings. And he goes on here and he says, there's sharing of the teachings and sharing of material things. What is the best? Well, sharing the teachings. There's two kinds of assistance. There's assistance with the teachings and assistance with material things. What would be superior? It would be assistance with the teachings, because there's no gift that's better than getting to a point where you're completely peaceful and joyful. It doesn't matter what you give your parents. You could give them a house, you could give them a car, you could give them money, you could give them anything and everything. That pales in comparison to being able to give the gift of the teachings. Because if you could truly give a gift of peace and joy to somebody, you'd probably hand it out to everybody. In fact, if there was like a button that you could press and your family would stay bitter and harsh and hostile for the rest of their life, or this button you could press and they'd be peaceful for the rest of their life, which button would you press, A or B? You'd press B, right? Unfortunately, that's not the way it works. You know, if we could press a button and everybody would be peaceful, that'd be wonderful. But that's not the way it works. The teachings need to be available in the world. And that's what merit is. It's helping to make the teachings available in the world. So you might not be in a position to ever share the teachings like a teacher, but merit allows you to share the teachings with others. It's the very best gift that you could ever give. And that's why the Buddha is teaching this. And now here's the very last thing that I'll teach on this topic. Then I'll just see what questions you guys have. It's called mutual support between monks, Brahmins, and householders. But let me explain to you what a Brahmin is, because you might not know. We might refer to a Brahmin as a Hindu priest, that during the lifetime of the Buddha, and even now, there are certain castes where people are born into certain segments of the population. And it's thought that if you're born into a Brahmin family, that you're a holy person. And now what people were taught during the lifetime of the Buddha is that if you were having difficulties and struggles in your life, you needed to go see a Brahmin. This was about 15% of society. And now you would go see this person and you would tell them all your problems, and they would do a ritual or a ceremony or some type of prayer for you, and you would pay them a fee. And then when you pay them this fee and they do this ceremony or this ritual or this prayer, you were supposed to go home and your life was going to get better. What people were taught is you can't change your life. You can't improve your life. You have to go to a Brahmin. And this Brahmin was going to do a prayer or ritual on your behalf, and then your life would get better. So if you were having difficulties with your husband or wife or your children, you would go to this Brahmin. They would say, hey, it's going to be $5. I'll do the ceremony for you, and then your life's going to get better. And then you would pay your $5. You would go home. Life didn't get better. And then you would come back a few weeks later and you would say, hey, things have gotten worse. And they're like, oh, there's another ceremony for that. That's going to be $20 to do that one, right? And so the Buddha could see that this bred corruption. And this isn't the way that the world actually worked. But these Brahmin, they actually were studying with the Buddha to a certain degree, because they would teach a little bit of moral conduct, right? They not only did these rituals and ceremonies, but they would teach a little bit of moral conduct. So they would learn with the Buddha sometimes. So now you know the backstory. So the Buddha says, monks, Brahmin and householders are very helpful for you, or to you. They provide you with the requisites of robes, alms food, lodging, and medicines in time of sickness. And you monks are very helpful to Brahmins and householders as you teach them the teachings that are good in the beginning, the middle, and the end, with the correct meaning and wording, and you proclaim the spiritual life in its fulfillment in complete purity. Thus, monks, this spiritual life is lived with mutual support for the purpose of crossing the flood and making a complete end of discontentedness. So he's talking about this mutual support between the students and then the people who are sharing the teachings. He would teach people that if you were interested in sharing his teachings, to leave from your worldly life in order to be able to devote your time to be able to learn and practice yourself. and then be able to share those teachings with other people. And then that way, these people that they were then servicing the community. And then if they were going to eat, it was the community that was going to help them to be able to eat. So for example, if somebody on the side had a business and they were also teaching the teachings of the Buddha, what do you think they would do if their business was having problems and their students were having problems? If they were making money from their business, where are they going to devote their attention? They're going to devote their attention to the business, right? So what the Buddha was teaching was to walk away from that and then devote your time to helping students, because then they would help their students to be able to learn and grow and develop. So the Buddha created this mutual support from the very beginning in order to be able to help his teachings continue in the world. That, for example, people who practice this way, they don't eat if they don't share the teachings. Right? Of course, those people could choose to do something else. They could choose to go open a business if they like. But once you devote your life to that type of lifestyle, you don't eat if you don't share the teachings with other people. And this is a way to make sure that the teachings continue in the world. So there's this mutual support between the students and the teachers. It's been going on ever since the lifetime of the Buddha. And it helps the teachings to be shared in the world so that people can get the help that they need to be able to train their mind and improve what they're experiencing on a day-to-day basis, getting to more peace and more joy. Okay, so this is the topic of merit. And whenever I share this topic, I like to take a moment at the end to say a few things. The first thing I'd like to share with you is that if you've done anything to be able to help me to be able to share these teachings, I'd like to say thank you. I appreciate your generosity. I appreciate your help. I never expect that somebody will share with me to be able to help me share the teachings. I'm here without any expectation of anything in return from you. I'm here to share these teachings with you. But oftentimes people do help me. They will wash the bathroom. They will clean the bathroom. They will take out the trash. They will vacuum. Sometimes people put a little money in the donation box so we can pay for electric and water and things like that. I'm always very appreciative of this. I share these teachings far and wide with anybody who has a sincere interest in learning these teachings without any expectation of anything in return. I've gotten emails before from people who are in small islands off the coast of Africa, and they say, you know, David, we don't even have a library on our island, but we have access to the internet. And I'd like to just thank you for making your books available, because I can download them for free on the internet. And we don't even have a library on our island. And I've gotten emails from people who live in small villages that say that they live off of $50 a month, and that's all they have to be able to sustain themselves. And they really much appreciate that I'm able to share the teachings with them without any expectation. So thank you for anybody who has supported me to be able to offer these teachings, because it's your support that allows me to do this kind of stuff. But just know that I never have an expectation that you will support me. So no matter where I am teaching, it's always available at no cost. Even when I travel, I go different places. I've been all over the world teaching at different places. I always ensure that it's organized in a way that people can come for free. They don't have to pay anything. So if you ever see me teaching anywhere, it's always going to be available at no cost. There's never a time that anybody's going to ask you for any money. But I do appreciate any support that you have offered, but just know that that's not required. You can always learn with me at any time, at any place that I'm teaching, and there's never an expectation of you. Okay, so thank you for your support. Thank you for everything you do to learn and practice the teachings, because it's the very best thing that you could ever do for yourself, is to learn these teachings and practice them closely. It's going to help you. It's going to help all those people around you who you interact with. And it's going to help all of humanity, because it's going to become a more kind, more loving, more gentle place for people to exist. So do you guys have any questions on this topic of merit? Yeah. Could you get a mic?
to
Am I planning to do what?
any country in Europe.
Oh, okay. In Europe, you said.
Yeah.
Okay.
In a small period of time.
I haven't had anybody in Europe invite me to Europe to be able to teach. I'd be pleased to go if somebody invited me. The places I've been is Mexico. I've been to the USA. I've been to Egypt. Of course, I've been throughout Thailand. Different places have invited me in Thailand. I think those are the most places that I've been teaching. But whenever somebody invites me, I'm pleased to go. It just, I don't ask to come. I just wait for somebody to invite me.
Mm. And the second question is that about I agree with you that it's important to help to make donation to the teaching because it's very useful.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, in the past, I used to. It's nothing about you. In the past, as I used to give money when some associations, ONG, I don't know, is a non-governmental association.
Mm-hmm. NGO.
Mm-hmm. They, for instance, to help children in Africa, to when there was disasters in the world, and they opened an account to put money in order to support people affected and those things. And I used to do these things. I used to help people, but then I realized, or I listened on the news, that some association people get the money for themselves to enjoy the money, and finally the money didn't go the place that it should be gone, and the purpose that I did the donation.
Yeah.
And this made I was happy giving money to people, but this stopped me to do these actions because I thought that there was people that was benefit with my money, and this is not my intention.
Yeah.
And what have to do, because I think that all the organization and all the people are not the same.
Yeah.
But you think I give money and maybe the money go to the place that it should be, but I give money and my money doesn't go to the place that, and after the donations I have doubts.
Yeah.
And I'm not feel good to don't do the donations because I lied.
This is where discernment comes in. Discernment is wise decision making. So before you do that kind of thing, you would be wise to investigate that organization, because typically an NGO, they're going to usually publish, typically, probably not always, what they're doing with their money, what amount of it goes to administrative fees versus how much of it goes to actually helping and providing the aid. So you would like to always practice discernment. Whenever you're practicing generosity and anything else in the world, you always need to base it on wise decision making. So in that situation, it would be wise for you to practice discernment if you're going to give money to some organization to be able to help some cause. Be sure you investigate to see how they're spending the money. Or the other side of it is you can just do it yourself. If you have some way of funneling those resources to that particular group that needs help, you can do it that way too.
The most important is your action, final, because sometimes they are organization well known, but you didn't have expected these actions for some people, not all the people.
Yeah.
But the most important is your action, independent of finally if the money is people make profit or go the place that is needed.
Yes, your action is what's going to produce your kamma. Whatever decision you make, either wise or unwise, it's going to produce kamma. And so when you're making an offering to an organization who, let's just say they misappropriate the funds, in terms of your generosity, it's still helping to enhance the quality of your mind. You're still getting that benefit, but your resources now aren't benefiting the world in the best way that they could. So in terms of your benefit, you're still experiencing the benefit to the enhancement of your mind, but your resources aren't benefiting the world as much as they could, right? So you would like to improve that so that by now practicing discernment, not only are you going to get the enhancement of the quality of your mind, but the world's going to benefit from your resources too. And that amplifies the effect of your generosity. Okay. All right. Yeah, you have a question? Yeah, those mics always work better. That's why we have them labeled that way.
Yes. Regarding the generosity, I know I'm far away behind being generosity, but I don't know how to. My question is, I don't know how to eliminate my craving for having expectation from people giving return back to me, because every time when I realize I'm being generosity or I'm being kind with people, I have a huge expectation from that person, whatever is friend or partner or family, they can give me something back in one day.
Yeah.
But when I realize I have the feeling for waiting them giving me back, which made me feel awful or feel very uncomfortable.
Okay. So that's not generosity yet, right? So you're not practicing generosity. You still have craving in there. So you need to be able to pay attention to your mind. And before you make an offering or you make a gift or you practice any kind of generosity, you need to make sure you look at your own mind and make sure that there's no expectations there. And now let's just say you give your gift thinking that there is no expectations there, but you notice down the road they start cropping up in your mind. You start having these expectations. That's where you got to cut that off and get rid of it. Don't allow that to come into your mind. So as you notice expectations coming up into your mind, get rid of them. So you would like to kind of have what the Buddha calls well-collected thought. Before you make an offering, you'd like to have well-collected thought, where you put your thoughts together and they're well-collected. And now you make your gift to your friends or your family or what have you. By the way, that's not merit, but that's generosity. You would like to practice your generosity with the understanding that there's no expectations, right? And now that's when you make your offering. But then afterwards, if you're noticing expectations come up, cut that off. That's why you're using the breathing mindfulness meditation and the generosity to be able to help you to do this. One of the ways that I think about this is think about your unenlightened mind, your untrained mind, that it's like going forward in life and it's plowing ahead in life. You've kind of got this parallel process that you're trying to develop enough meditation, enough generosity, enough moral conduct that you're kind of slowly but surely catching up to this unenlightened mind. And remember, your unenlightened mind is going forward in life like this. And you're trying to do enough wholesome actions through generosity, through improving your moral conduct, through meditation, that you eventually catch up with the mind. And now you kind of envelop the mind, and now you've got control over your mind. So right now, your mind's out there, and you're trying to kind of catch up to it. You're not in a race. You don't have to hurry up and do it, but just slowly but surely, with all your generosity, improving your moral conduct and your meditation, slowly catch up to this mind, and now you'll get to the point where it's enveloped. So it takes time, but this is how you do it, is with your generosity, just think before you give. Make sure you don't have any expectations in there. And now you give. And then if at any point you see expectations come up, cut that off and cut that off. And over time, you'll eventually get to a point where you can give and share without any expectations. And that's what will protect your mind. Because what people will think is if you're practicing generosity, people will say, oh, they're taking advantage of me. But that's because you have expectations of what you want back from this person. I had a student contact me one time. She's a single mom. She has 3 kids, and she had this boyfriend who wanted to buy her kids winter jackets. And she said, "Oh no, it's fine. You don't need to buy them winter jackets. It's fine. I'll take care of it myself." And he said, "No. I want to buy your kids winter jackets." And she said, "Okay, it's up to you." So he bought her kids these winter jackets. About 2 or 3 months later, she ended up breaking up with him because he was a very angry, bitter, and hostile individual. So she ended up breaking up with him. And after she broke up with him, he's like, "You took advantage of me. You used me." And she was coming to me and she's like, "Is that what I did? I don't think I did that." And I was like, "No, he just had expectations. He was buying your kids winter jackets with the expectation that you were going to be his girlfriend for a period of time. And now that you've broken up with him, he's saying that you've used him or you've taken advantage of him, where in reality, he didn't practice pure generosity. He gave those gifts to the kids with an expectation that you would be his girlfriend. So he caused his own discontentedness. So that's what the mind can do in the unenlightened state, is when you're practicing generosity, you want something back in return. And when you don't get it back, someone might say, "They took advantage of me," where in reality, it was just your expectations. Get rid of your expectations. Practice generosity in the middle. Only ever give something that you're able to give. Don't give more. Don't give less. Just give what you're capable of giving. And when you give, you give. It's out of your hands. It's not yours anymore.
Thank you. That story reminds me of myself in another way. I think especially for me, I think I'm easy to be generosity for strangers, but especially for the closer relationship, especially close friend or partner or my parents, I would like to get more from them, even though I just give them a small thing, but I would like to get back a lot from them. Is that normal or?
It's normal for an unenlightened mind, but it's not what you would ultimately like to get to. That's not generosity. If you're giving your gift to your parents because you want something in return, you're having craving, desire, attachment. You're having wants and expectations. So you would like to get rid of that. So it's good that you mentioned that when you make offering, when you give gifts to people you don't know, you don't have expectations. So that's actually helpful. So do that. Do more of that, because that's going to help you to then be able to do the same thing with your parents and your siblings and other people like this. So you're going to need to practice more generosity so that your mind can get comfortable with giving without any expectation of anything in return.
It's because of the attachment, because we have attachments with the close circle.
That's what that is that's an attachment. That's a craving. Your mind's wanting something here. You need to get to a point where you're giving and sharing without any expectation of anything in return, right? Like one time I went to my mom's house and she had this deck off of her house and it was falling apart. It was dilapidated and she could have easily hurt herself coming out. I rebuilt the whole deck in like an entire day. I went and bought the wood. I transported it back to her house and did all this work to build her a deck. I didn't want anything from her. I was just interested in seeing her have a nice deck that she could walk on safely and she could come out of her house and she'd be safe. That's all I was interested in. I didn't want anything from her. So that's what you would like to do, is practice with your parents where you're giving them something and you don't want anything from them. Because remember, they took care of you. When you first came into this world, you might have disagreed with things that your parents did. I'm sure you did. But nonetheless, they gave you food, clothing, shelter, medical care. They gave you education, right? And here you are, an adult, fully functioning adult. And now there's this almost debt of gratitude that we can have for our parents. We didn't agree with what they did 100%, but at least they took care of us enough that now as an adult, we can take care of ourselves. Right? Because when we first came into this world, we were completely dependent on the world. So even though we disagreed with what our parents did to a certain degree, at least you can have appreciation and gratitude for what they did do for you. So now when you give them a gift back, it's like them getting their Kamma back. right? Like they gave you all of this. So now you don't have to, but it would be wise for you to give to them to show them your appreciation and gratitude for what they gave you, because you've already gotten everything and they've already given it to you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yep.
She said she have no trouble give generosity to people that she don't know, but she give generosity when someone she know or very close to, she have trouble. But my question is, I can give my parents, or like we have blood relationship. I have no trouble. I'm very generosity. I hope them live them their best life. I want help them, or I want them the best. But when I come to like love relationship, my partner, I have trouble. I always craving him can give back me more or equal. So I don't know why I thought this. Is this normal? Oh, and I give like people I don't know, I can be very generosity. But when the things come to my partner, my life partner, or my relationship, love relationship, I have craving. Get them give me back more.
Yeah. So you're not practicing true love yet, right? If you're falling in love and out of love with people, or if you think love hurts, this isn't love. And oftentimes people don't understand what love is. So in this book, in chapter 15, I teach you what is true love. Because as long as you don't know what true love is, you'll think that you're falling in love and out of love, and you'll think love hurts and love is painful. And you'll also do things like what you're talking about, where you want and expect things from this person. So you need to first understand what is true love. Then you can actually practice it, because true love is unconditional love, but people don't understand this in the unenlightened state. That's part of that lack of wisdom that the mind has. And this is why people have so much difficulties in their relationships. So you're going to need to know the Eightfold Path. That's definitely something that you need to learn from this, because you weren't here on Tuesday. But then also you're going to need to know true love. So that's why this book is so important for people to just get started.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. So the next thing I share with you guys is how to get continued support on the path to enlightenment, because nobody has gotten to enlightenment in the 4 days that I've been teaching you. It's not possible. You're going to need continued support. And there's lots of opportunities for you to learn. There's books, audiobooks, videos, podcasts. There's quizzes. You can access all of this from our website at buddhadailywisdom.com. It's available for you at no cost. There's in-person and online classes, courses, and retreats. You can learn here. You can learn online. You can learn when I travel. It's all available for you from our website. There's 2 different programs that people will typically take. There's something called the group learning program. What I do is each Sunday, I go chapter by chapter in this book. It's a 7-month program, and we're actually restarting it this Sunday. I do it every 7 months. I restart it. So we just happen to be restarting it this Sunday. So I'm going to go chapter by chapter by chapter over a 7-month period. So you can take that easily from this course. You can go into that. And then after students have done that, or sometimes people do it more than one time, they then go into what's called the Words of the Buddha, the Pali Canon and English Study Group. This meets on Saturdays. And on Saturdays, what we do is we do volumes 2 through 13. So that's a 1.5-year program. So this one up here is like lays down a foundation. It creates a framework for you. And the Pali Canon English Study Work kind of fills that in. The study group, that kind of fills it in for you. Okay, so these are 2 ongoing programs that you can easily take just little by little on Saturdays and Sundays. And it's all available at no cost. Then as you're learning in these classes and courses and retreats, there's going to be times where you have certain personal situations come up and you would like help, because the classes are teaching you generally, but there's going to be personal situations. And that's where you can get a personal guidance session. You can either do that in person, whereas if we're in the same town, you can just send me a message and we can connect up, schedule a time, and we can sit down and talk. at a smoothie shop, at a restaurant, wherever it is you'd like to meet, at a park or something like that. But if you're traveling and I'm traveling, you can schedule online. If you go to our website, you can schedule an appointment and then we can meet in Zoom, because you're going to need multiple personal guidance sessions. You're not going to get to enlightenment by just taking classes. You're going to need to interact with a teacher and ask questions of how to apply the teachings in any given situation. So feel free to reach out. There's unlimited amount of times that you can get help from me. I'm here to help all of you guys. Then there's a Facebook group that if you'd like to ask questions, you can put those into the Facebook group, and I'm the only person who answers the questions in there. There's 4 ways that you can get help. You can ask questions in a live class. You can send me a private message. You can post in our Facebook group, or you can schedule personal guidance. Those are the 4 ways you can get help. And it's always available for you at no cost. So any questions on continued support? Yep.
This Sunday lesson on Saturday is online too. No, we can meet, but it would be recorded that you can listen not in the Sunday, maybe on Monday, because you on Sunday are busy and you can.
Yeah, that's a good point, that all the stuff that I do here, it's all recorded. So you can attend live, either in person or online. But if you can't, it's recorded on Facebook, YouTube, and our podcast. You can learn it from there at any point in time that you'd like. That's convenient for
but
you.
But you can access in this website, no? They recorded.
Yeah, you can. If you go to
class.
if you go to our website, it's like a central hub, and it'll launch you into the YouTube channel, into the podcast, into all the other things that we have. The website's like a central hub.
And tomorrow, we'll have class tomorrow.
Tomorrow we have a tour. I'm going to talk about that here in a moment.
But what time? At 9?
Yeah, if you meet here at 9. Then
But
you'll be
it's a whole day too?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm going to talk about it in a moment.
And on Saturday?
I'm going to talk about it here in a moment.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So here's the classes, the group learning program. It meets at 9 a.m. or 9 p.m. on Sunday and Wednesday. It's the same class. It's just a different time because people in Europe are sleeping. Or people in Australia are sleeping. So I kind of set it up in a way that no matter what time zone you're in, you can attend a live class. Right. And then on Saturdays, it's at 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. So depending on what program you take, you can join either of those. Okay. So then in the afternoon, what I typically teach students, since we're going to be breaking here and kind of ending our class for the day, what I typically teach students is how to integrate the teachings into your life. Because once you study these teachings, you'd like to kind of integrate this into your life. Because if you just spend time here in the 4 or 5 days that I'm teaching and you do nothing, then okay, it was a good time to spend time with you, but you're not going to see the real results. But if you integrate what it is that I'm teaching you, then you'll actually see real results. So here's what I suggest people do in order to be able to really integrate these teachings into their life. That you attend weekly classes, either in person or online. And then you attend these in-depth training classes on an as-needed basis. So you like to be trickling the teachings in each week with weekly classes, and then occasionally do an in-depth class like this, a big course, right? This first book, you would like to be reading about 10, 15, 20 minutes a day, just little by little. This type of book isn't the type of book that you'd like to just plow through it, right? Like if you have a story book, sometimes people want to hurry up and get to the end in order to be able to see what the ending of the story is. So they'll spend, a week or two and they'll just plow through the book. So I'm going to tell you what the ending of the story is of this book so that you don't actually have to plow through it and hurry up and go through it. The ending of the story of this book is you get to enlightenment. That's the ending of the story. Okay, so now just take your time and gradually walk your way through the book because you need to independently verify the teachings, right? So if you read for 2 hours or 3 hours, that's like taking a big bite of pizza. It's really hard to chew that and digest it. But if you just read 10, 15, 20 minutes, you can just chew on that. And now you can independently verify what it is that you learned and you can implement it into your life. So you like to just read slowly. What you're going to notice is that if you're reading this way, There's going to be situations where something just happened 3 days ago and you're reading and you're like, oh my gosh, here's the teachings of the Buddha. I could have done that so much better. Now I see a better way to do that. Or you're going to be reading, and now 5 days from now, that exact situation that the Buddha is teaching you about is going to happen, and you'll already have the wisdom of what it takes to be able to solve that particular issue. So if you just trickle the teachings in like this, where you're going to classes and you're reading the book, you're going to, over time, accumulate a lot of wisdom to be able to help you in your life. Then you'd like to be practicing generosity daily, like we just talked about. Your frequency is more important than the amount. So if it's a matter of giving $500 once a year to an orphanage or $1 a day, the $1 a day is actually more impactful for your mind because your mind's having to let go more frequently. So you'd like to be able to frequently be practicing generosity. Then you'd like to be regularly improving your moral conduct every day, working on improving your moral conduct, your speech, your actions, your livelihood. You like to pay attention to that. Don't allow yourself to be harsh and hostile and bitter with people. Your mom, your dad, your brothers, your sisters, you're going to need to change all of that stuff. So pay attention to that. You're going to make mistakes. It's understandable, but now just keep working to improve it little by little. Then you're going to need to build a meditation practice 2 or 3 times per day for about 30 minutes. It can take you 6 months, a year, even 2 years to build up to this. You're not in a race with anybody. Just take your time and slowly but surely build up your meditation practice. Again, frequency is more important than the amount. If it's a matter of 1 meditation for 30 minutes or 2 for 15, the 2 for 15 is actually more impactful for your mind. So do the 2 for 15 and then gradually expand that to be longer and longer. So then, as you need help, seek guidance from a teacher. This is how you're going to be able to get the help that you need, is doing this. This is how you integrate the teachings into your day-to-day life. So any questions on continued support or integrating the teachings into your life? No questions? Okay, so as you guys heard, the Buddha was sharing the very best gift that anybody could give you is a gift of the teachings, right? I've been giving you that gift throughout this course and throughout the time that you're studying with me. I'm giving you this gift of the teachings. And I consider that to be the very best gift that I could ever give you. But I actually have a real material gift that I would actually like to give you as well. Up here in this white container, I have little posters of the Buddha, this image right here. I have it in a poster format. It's about this big and about this wide. If you would like an image of the Buddha and take with you, I'd like to give it to you as a gift, because oftentimes people depict the Buddha in a way that he actually didn't appear. All these statues that you see of the Buddha where he has a crown on his head and he has all these elaborate clothes on, he actually never looked like that during his lifetime. This is the artwork done that depicts what he looked like during his lifetime. He just looked like a regular human being, just like you and me. He wore these rag robes and he shaved his hair. I think it's really important to humanize the Buddha. Oftentimes people put the Buddha up really, really high, and sometimes people think, oh, the Buddha got to enlightenment. I can't. Only the Buddha can do it. But I would like to humanize the Buddha so that you can understand the Buddha is human, just like you and just like me. He got to enlightenment by himself. You're going to need help from a teacher or guide. So if you have one of these pictures hanging on your wall, maybe it can help you to humanize a Buddha and realize that he got to enlightenment and so can you. Maybe you can look at it and it can remind you to do meditation. Or maybe you're on your phone to your parents or your life partner or something, and you feel this anger starting to come up in your mind. And out of the corner of your eye, you see that picture and you're like, right speech, right speech. All right, let me talk nicely to mom, right? So if you would like one of these little posters, you're welcome to come get one. They're up here. Take it with you. If you like to give it away, I don't have any expectation of what you do with it. Maybe you have someone in your hotel that has been taking care of you, or at a restaurant, you'd like to give it to them. Feel free to give it to them too, right? So this is just a gift from me to you. It's rolled up and it just happens to look like a diploma. So you might think about it that way, that at the end of a course like this, maybe you're getting a little diploma. So feel free to take whatever you like. This is a gift from me to you to help you to humanize a Buddha so that you can see that he got to enlightenment and so can you. Okay. So the thing that I normally do in the afternoon is when we come back, students will oftentimes do breathing mindfulness meditation on their own. They will ask questions related to the path to enlightenment. It's kind of like a lab time that people just kind of free time at the end of the class. Or sometimes people like to practice generosity to kind of clean up the classroom because we've been here all week. Sometimes people like to clean the toilets or vacuum. It's up to you if you like to do any of these kinds of things. This is what is possible. It's kind of like what I do is in the afternoons, we come back from lunch and it's kind of like lab time. I've been teaching you all week long, and then people just do whatever they would like to do in the afternoon. And what I usually do in the afternoon too is I teach about what I'm going to do tomorrow. Right. So what I'm going to do tomorrow is I'm going to come here in the morning like I normally do. And I'm going to start at 9 o'clock with meditation. And there's going to be some people here that aren't part of the class that they're going to come for the tour. Because what I'm going to do after meditation is I'm going to take you guys to 2 different temples. There's a temple outside the city called Wat Umong. It's a forest temple. I'm going to walk you around this temple, and I'm going to teach you the artwork, the architecture, and the symbolism of the temple. So you'll get to learn all of that. It's kind of like a classroom without walls. It's a learning tour where I'm going to walk you around and teach you. And then we're going to go from there. We're going to go up the mountain to a restaurant. We're going to go to a hill tribe restaurant, and we're going to eat lunch. They have a really big, thick menu. They have meat dishes. They have vegetarian dishes. They have vegan dishes. You can eat whatever you like there. If they don't have something that you would like, I've seen them go get it from other places. So you just tell them whatever you would like, and they'll take really good care of you. Then we're going to go into a temple on the mountain. It's called Wat Doi Suthep. It's a different type of temple. These are 2 different branches of Buddhist teachings in Thailand, and you'll visit those 2 different branches in one day, and you'll be able to see the difference between the 2 of them. So I'll tour you guys around that temple, and then we'll come back down here, and we'll get down here about 5 p.m. is generally when we get here. Sometimes a little bit earlier, sometimes a little bit later. And at 6 p.m. on Fridays, we have Temple Fun Night where we play games and we do different things here. So that's an option for you too. If you'd like to stick around, you're welcome to do that. So this is what I typically do. And if you would like to come, what the students do is they usually share the cost of transportation. It usually ends up being around 200 or 300 baht per person. And then you're going to need a little bit of money for your lunch and stuff like that. So if you have like 500, 600, 800 baht in your pocket, you'll be more than fine because there's water and snacks and everything along the way. You don't have to load yourself up with a bunch of stuff. You can just come as you are with a little bit of money in your pocket, and you'll just be fine for the day. So that's what our plan is for tomorrow. You're welcome to come. If you bump into people who haven't even been here, they're welcome to come too. Everybody's welcome. So I organize the transportation based on whoever's here. So that's what we're planning to do tomorrow. Understand? Okay. Yeah. It'll be a fun time. It'll be a good time to get out and walk around. The first temple is like a park. There's trees and it's almost like being in a park. Yeah. Okay, so we're officially done for today. I'll finish by thanking you like I typically do. Thank you for your interest in learning the teachings of the Buddha. If you'd like to come tomorrow, I'll be here. You can look at our schedule and you'll see all the other options as well. Whatever you do today, have a very lovely and wonderful rest of your day. Okay? Take care. Sawadee krap. Sawadee krap.